Good to see you all. I'm Scott. I'm the minister at Christchurch, Newland. I'm going to speak to you this evening a bit of the Christmas message. I'm married to Laura. Laura is convinced that she suffers from SADS. Now, SADS is not Scott Adjustment Disorder. If you, anyone adjusting to living with me would undoubtedly suffer from Scott Adjustment Disorder. I'm very particular. I like things in a certain way, and our little nutcracker shelf, if Laura cleans it and doesn't put them back in the right order, I have to instruct her in order to do that. But that's not the SADS that she suffers from, not the one that she'll admit to. SADS is talking about seasonal affective disorder. If you go on the NHS website, it says this: SAD is sometimes known as winter depression because the symptoms are usually more severe during the winter months. And here are some of the symptoms as listed on the website: a persistent low mood, a loss of pleasure in normal everyday activities, irritability, a feeling of worthlessness, lack of energy, and difficulty concentrating. And they don't know the exact reason why people suffer from SADS, but it's often linked to reduced exposure to sunlight and during the shorter autumn and winter days. Now, I guess it's true for all of us, that the vast majority of us are really waiting for winter to pass, hoping for a glorious summer. And that would be a common experience to all of us. But I'd like to suggest that we all suffer from SADS in a deeper way that we realize. Living in the UK, we get our 4 seasons that come to pass. And although people argue that the seasons are starting to merge into one, we can usually say whether we're in summer, winter, spring, or autumn, can't we? They're identifiable. However, while we might be able to recognize the physical seasons of the UK, I think we're less able to identify what I might call the spiritual season that we're in, the spiritual seasons of the earth. Because it seems to me that we're actually stuck in spiritual winter. We're stuck in a spiritual winter. Now, I'd like to explain what I mean by that by unpacking a theme in C.S. Lewis's book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, you have this little girl, Lucy. She's one of 4 children that have been taken off to this house, and she discovers a magical wardrobe. She goes through the wardrobe, and it's a door into another world called Narnia. And she arrives there, and it's winter, and she meets this guy, Mr. Tumnus. We're going to watch a little clip from it now. So Mr. Tumnus says to Lucy, "It's winter in Narnia and has been for ever such a long time. Always winter, but never Christmas." Now imagine that, always winter, but never Christmas. Let's take winter in the UK and remove Christmas from it. How do you feel about it now? No lights, no decorations, no trees, no gathering with families, no parties, no gifts, no presents, no hope, nothing to look forward to. Winter is bleak, isn't it? It's bleak, it's dark, it's oppressive, and that's why people get sad in winter. We want spring to break in. The seasons come and go in the UK, but I wonder if you realize that, like Narnia, without Jesus, we're always trapped in winter in a spiritual sense. It's always winter for us and never Christmas. You see, don't we feel and experience that? The kind of the weariness of our own world, the sickness of a sister, the loss of the life, the burden of paying the bills. Monday is mundane, Tuesday is taxing, Wednesday is wearying, Thursday has its troubles, and on it goes. You hope for some relief at the weekend, but the week starts again. Spiritually, it's always winter, but without Christmas. And we hope this season in our life will pass, but one difficulty goes and another one arrives to take its place. We're trapped in that winter. Where is the hope? And where is the hope going to come from? But some people say, well, don't worry about it being winter, just make snowmen. What they mean by that is, just make the most of the season. Get out there and enjoy it as much as you can. But let's face it, that's all right for a short space of time, but it's not sustainable, is it? I mean, for you who are children or you remember being a child, the first fall of snow and when it settles, you want to get out there and build a snowman. But after an hour, everyone's wanting to go in, isn't it? And even the most hardened child wants to go in and thaw out and get off their wet clothes. It's not sustainable. And there's a Scandinavian saying that says, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes. And again, the idea is that really it doesn't matter what season it is, as long as you're dressed appropriately. Well, let's look at my friends here. Here's the Eskimos. They're always dressed appropriately. But I guess not many of us are passionate about moving to live with them in the Arctic, are we? No, because we don't want to live where it's perpetually winter. And we Brits have become very sort of adept at trying to make the most of each season and live. We've got a reputation, haven't we, in Europe, that they all say we're miserable and we bend over and we don't stand up straight. Do you know that's what the Europeans say about us? And they say it's because it's the weather, it beats us down. And there's some truth in it, isn't it? That if the weather, if it's miserable, it can make for miserable people. So we try to adjust, and we do this with our lives. In his book, The Seasons of Life, author and motivational speaker Jim Rohn, he writes this: make a constant and conscious effort to improve ourselves as we face the changing circumstances of life, to assure a tolerance for the winters of life's events, and to permit ourselves the full enjoyment of the blessings of life's harvest when it comes to the autumn. So what he's basically saying is, and what he says in his book is, winter refines you. As long as you approach it in the right way, it refines you and gets you ready for the fruit of the autumn. However, I think that's utter rubbish. I think winter doesn't refine you. I think winter grinds you down. Like, look at that tree. You might say, well, that tree could be getting refined. It could be getting strengthened as the ice and the snow bends it over. But actually, if it spent 12 months in that condition, it would die. Darker days, wetter weeks, colder climate, they have an impact on people. And so imagine the impact of living in a world that is perpetually and continually winter from a spiritual point of view. Without Christ, without God. The reading we had at the very beginning from Isaiah says the people who walk in darkness will see a great light. Winter will give way to spring, to summer. Those who live in the land of deep darkness, a light will shine. So let's just go back to Narnia. Narnia was under the grip of the White Witch. Always winter, but never Christmas. Cold, dark, evil. And our world was under the grip of sin and death. Always winter, but never Christmas. Narnia was a world that was in slavery and bondage to the White Witch, under a cloud, under a curse, waiting for that curse to be lifted. It was a world that wasn't as it should be, waiting for restoration. A world very much like ours, trapped in spiritual darkness. So let's return to Narnia. Lucy goes back and brings her brothers and sisters to Narnia through the wardrobe. And they meet Mr. and Mrs. Beaver, who tells them a prophecy. It says this: wrong will be right when Aslan comes in sight. At the sound of his roar, sorrows will be no more. When he bares his teeth, winter meets its death. And when he shakes his mane, we shall have spring again. Do you see the words of prophecy? It's hope that Aslan will bring an end to winter, bring an end to the curse of the white witch. And who is Aslan? Well, in the books, he's described as the true king of Narnia, the king of beasts, the son of the emperor over the sea, and the king above all high kings in Narnia. And the author of the book, C.S. Lewis, was wanting us to think about Jesus Christ when he spoke about the figure Aslan. According to the prophecy, Aslan's reappearance in Narnia would mark the return of spring, the death of the age of winter, after which this formerly oppressed Narnia would be restored and freed. The prophecy is clear. In the prophecy about Aslan, one will come who will conquer the white witch and bring an end to her reign and bring in spring. And what is spring? Well, we all know what spring is. Spring is a sign of new life, new beginnings, a new life for Narnia. And what did the prophecy in Isaiah say? Well, the prophecy in Isaiah was clear. One who would come, who would conquer darkness through his great light. Well, let me show you this next clip from the film that starts to see the change in Narnia once Aslan returns. So the White Witch didn't have the last word in Narnia. Aslan came and he broke the curse, ushered in spring. And our wounded world, our broken world, will not have the last word. The winter of our weary world that had never seen Christmas saw its first Christmas. And with the dawning of that light, the great light, Jesus Christ, with his birth, spring is ushered in. And much like Narnia, our world often feels stuck in a perpetual winter full of brokenness, pain, and longing. But just as Aslan's arrival brought light and life to Narnia, so Jesus' coming brings the promise of renewal, restoration, light, and eternal life for all who believe in him. When Aslan comes in sight, Christmas comes to Narnia at last. The long, dark spell of winter is broken, and the newness of spring arrives with all its beauty. And with the coming of Jesus Christ, the curse of our world has also been broken, and God offers newness of life to all who believe. And the Apostle Paul, one of the writers in the Bible, he wrote these words in 1 Corinthians. For as in Adam all die, that's the winter that the world experienced. So in Christ, all will be made alive. But each in turn, Christ, the first fruits. Then, when he comes, those who belong to him. Then the end will come, when he hands over the kingdom to God the Father, after he has destroyed all dominion and authority and power. For he must reign until he has put all enemies under his feet. And the last enemy to be destroyed is death. That is the summer. That's when summer will dawn, at the return of Christ, when he finally eradicates all enemies, including death. So you don't have to live a sad life. You don't have to live suffering from SADS, seasonal affective disorder, forever living in winter, spiritually speaking, without God and without hope. You don't have to remain trapped in spiritual winter because you don't know Jesus, where it's always winter but never Christmas, because Christmas has come. That's what we're here to celebrate, isn't it? The Son of God came to earth, born as a baby in Bethlehem, to lift the curse so that spring would come, so that we can enjoy new life that comes through him. The story of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a powerful story because it echoes our story. The winter of sin and death hung over this world. Christmas came because Jesus came, offering new life and hope. And this story can be your personal story too. If you put your trust in Jesus Christ, if you trust in him and believe in him, that curse will be lifted for you, and you can have forgiveness and life eternal in him. Come to Jesus, who took the curse of the world upon himself so that you can experience his light and his life. Before we sing our final carol, we're just going to listen to a song, and it has some of the imagery from Narnia in the background, speaking about Jesus as the promised one who came to lift the curse.